pleasure to introduce this morning Zandy Reinshagen. And Zandy is the Chief Operating Officer at San Antonio Federal Credit Union. I've been a consultant there for a number of years, but the good news is you won't have to listen to a consultant. The other thing is that Zandy wouldn't want me to say this, but it's important inside our organization for the managers to teach other people about the leadership, what we call the leadership framework or requisite principles. And Zandy's an incredible teacher and insists that her direct reports take this very seriously as well. So this isn't somebody who's just going through the motions, but really lives it, preaches it, and occasionally will chastise us when we're interviewing people to say, make sure that you tell the people that you're interviewing for selection purposes that this requisite stuff is important. Because I don't have them in my office where I have to explain it to them. Like, you guys didn't get your job done, and now I have to explain it to them. So we take it seriously, so looking forward to hearing this story. I've not seen Zandy's presentation, so I'm looking forward to hearing how, what you said.
Actually, he hasn't seen it, no one's seen it, because I rather do things more as a conversation than a presentation, because I've sat through a lot of bad presentations in my life, and so I try not to put people through that. So I like to start with a couple of disclaimers. First is I am not an expert. I am just a girl who met requisite organization when I first came to SACU. Actually, I was introduced to it before I was an actual employee. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And it's very much a part of how I lead and my expectations to my organization, like Michael said. And as, you know, kind of what Fred said, I have a loving relationship with Aura. The second disclaimer is English is not my first language. I speak Texan. So I apologize for the y'alls and the all y'alls and the fixin' twos and anything else y'all hear. So that's like really awful. When I tell people I'm from Texas and they go, no kidding. That's when I realize I have an accent, but I hear no accent. I'm going to start off with the one and only slide I have. I'm not big on slides either, but this is just an overview of the whole organization at SACU and kind of our progression with RO throughout our organization. So it basically just symbolizes where we were. This is really Zandy's belief and analysis. You know, you could ask 5 other people at the organization, they might think differently. But I arrived very late in 2007. So in 2008, even though we had an L5 design, the organization for the most part was operating at level 2. Just fighting fires, doing what we needed to do, getting things done. But there was no design work at higher levels. By 2010, still a level 5 design, but we had brought in a lot of well-defined level 3 roles, so we were starting to see real process innovation, system innovation, and work at that level. In 2011, we actually, because people like me, we had level 3 roles in place, people assimilated to it. We were actually getting to do some level 4 work. And in 2012, we had a CEO change, which actually the man who brought me into the credit union actually introduced requisite to SACU, became the new CEO. So that's when it really started going through the whole organization instead of just those areas that worked for Steve, who is our current CEO. And we actually started seeing some level 5 work in 2012 because Steve was running things at level 5. And right now we have a level 6 design that's pretty recent. Happened like in January, I think, maybe late December. And we really are operating at level 5. We really have that level of strategy and business focus. So that's SACU as a whole. What I'm here to talk about is how we drove requisite into an IT organization. The financial services industry, I'm sure most of you use your bank account differently today than you did, say, 5 years ago. It's rapidly changing. Just discount all the regulation, but just the technology. And the technology that our customers, and we call them members, expect. So technology in the credit union isn't just primarily about infrastructure anymore. It's really a big part of the services we provide, and has to be. And the demand is big. We have USAA. I don't know how many of y'all have heard of USAA, but they are really the leader in self-service channel. They have to be, because they don't really have a branch infrastructure. So they're really the technology bar for financial services in our marketplace and frankly beyond. So there are new expectations for technology, and IT now has to be a big part of that. I have no doubt that if we hadn't implemented requisite in IT when we did, we wouldn't be in a position today to take care of it and to operate differently. And I believe we are. That being said, it's time to redesign. And so we're redesigning after 5 years so that our mission and role with new technologies will meet those higher level expectations. So what was the state of the IT organization back in 2008? Well, it was very typical, very kind of legacy. Everybody did everything. You know, whoever yelled the loudest or had the biggest title got the attention. Whatever fire was burning got the attention. I actually came in before I came back to the credit union. That's a long story, a different presentation. But I came back as a consultant first and did kind of a organizational review of how the credit union was using technology. And so my findings report was pretty large. They're very, very much laggard in infrastructure technologies and just the way they were doing things. Formal processes were non-existent. Documented procedures, forget it. It was all in everybody's head because we have a lot of tenured employees that have been doing the same thing for 25 years. So that's where we were. And obviously Steve is a very bright person, and he knew what we needed to be in the future, and that wasn't going to cut it anymore. And IT wasn't able to meet the current needs, much less the future needs. So when he talked me into coming back, I had some very basic high-level objectives, nothing huge, because actually the organization couldn't have taken it. We had to improve service and remove the chaotic service style. We needed to improve the ability to deliver large-scale initiatives. I mean, they could handle the day-to-day, and they could handle whatever fire came up, but they couldn't deliver new initiatives, and that's why we were so far behind in technology. So it was very important to change that, or we weren't going to get anywhere. We needed to upgrade the technology because I had come from the outside. It was very obvious that just very basic new technologies weren't even being thought of or planned for. And then we had to build an organization that could handle all of that, because it was going to be a pretty big shift for everybody, and everybody was going to come out of their comfort zone. So our big challenges were that while we had a very dedicated, hardworking team, that all hands on deck style wasn't going to work. We couldn't have everybody in level 2 situation response. We had to be able to complete initiatives. We actually had a new phone system, a voice over IP phone system project that had been going on for 2 years. And it wasn't even at business case completion. I mean, business case wasn't even close. We had absolutely zero defined processes, much less written procedures, as I said, zero process innovation. They had installed a new core processing system. For those of you who are not in the financial industry, the core is everything, and basically is your engine, and it really is the indicator of what you can and cannot do. Well, they had just converted to what I believe is, the best core system in our industry, but because of how IT was operating, they couldn't take advantage of what that system could do for them. So I used to call it, when I worked for that vendor, everybody just converts to a mirror. So they just make the new system do what they did before. They didn't take advantage of the new capabilities they had. IT had been exposed to RO, had kind of like dipped their toe in the water because IT was under Steve, and Steve was already trying to get some traction with it. But the things they learned were translated into dysfunctional behaviors. What kind of the main thing they took out of it was telling people, well, you can't ask me for that. You can't talk to me, and so, okay, that's not really what you're supposed to get out of it. And everybody was just working really hard to keep things going. So how did we give RO legs in IT? Well, the first thing was, Steve brought me in, but it was very clear, the non-negotiable is requisite organization. And that's really how we bring everybody in now. This is the non-negotiable. You have to be sure that you want to live under this structure with these principles and are okay with throwing away the legacy style of management and leadership. And it's very easy. People go, yes, it sounds very interesting, I'd like to do it. But it really is the non-negotiable, especially since Steve is CEO now. So I came in, Steve made me do a whole lot of reading, a whole lot of assessments, a whole lot of stuff before I was even an employee. So I was committed to it. It excited me to know that I would have this system to help me build things, because I was brought up in the old legacy style of management, and as I got more into requisite, I just kind of went, ooh, I was a really bad manager, and this is why I failed sometimes, or especially why people failed under me. So I was brought in this newly designed CIO role, and the goal was to keep me in level 4 work. I didn't even office in the IT area. And I had told Steve, it's like, I don't want to be down there. Because if I am, I'm going to be pulled into everything that's going on. And that wasn't my role. And frankly, I've been doing this a long time. I wasn't interested in being in the middle of every fire anymore.
I'm sorry, Zandy, what year was this?
This was very late 2007, so let's say beginning of 2008.
Good, I'm sorry, I just wanted
That's
to...
okay.
And it was about 2 years after they were first beginning to pilot.
Thank
Yeah, actually, the pilot for requisite SAC was in a QSO that was run very separate from the credit union. So I didn't even include those years on it because it was very isolated. They built that business using requisite principles. But first things first, I was in a level 4 role. I wanted to stay out of the firefighting, but I had an organization to build. So I did have to, dip down and design level 3. I had to assess what the organization was going to need to look like to accomplish those objectives. So I designed roles for level 3, then the level 3s and I designed level 2 roles. And I was only really involved in that because the level 3s were kind of new to requisite. We followed the principles of, probably many of you have read this, it's a book on professional organization, Designing the Professional Organization. It was written by Ralph Rowbottom and David Phillips. I don't know if y'all ever read that.
That's right.
So we modeled, especially the development roles, from their levels of practitioners model for professionals. So it started with beginning practitioners, main grade, and senior. So for developers, for example, we had developer, senior developer, lead developer, and we used that as a model. Clarifying roles was key. Not every role's priority could be or should be situational response. It was very hard to get them to understand that. Because really in IT, those of you who are in IT, you kind of get your self-esteem and feeling good about what you do by fixing somebody's problem, no matter how trivial it is. I mean, it was for me, you know, when I was a programmer, what made me feel good was writing a program that, you know, someone would go, oh my gosh, you're so wonderful. You know, it was like a simple little 5-minute program. So that's kind of what feeds people in IT a lot. So to pull them out of that was not easy. But what helped is that we did a structured design. Everybody knew exactly what their role was and how it was different from their manager or different from everybody else in the organization. I had to get the right people in the right roles, and I didn't get it right the first time. Both level 3s I put in place, or I shouldn't say level 3s. Both people in level 3 roles, I'm trying to break ourselves with that. They just, while I still to this day believe they were capable at level 3, and they valued level 3. I mean, I gave them the option. I didn't say, this is your new role. This is the design. Would you like it? They just couldn't change how they worked. Try as they might. Try as hard as I might. I can't tell you how many times I had to go, is that your work? And I go, I'm not sure. You know, we're all working here, but it doesn't really sound like level 3 work. You know, why are you programming? So I just couldn't, I gave it 2 years, probably a year too long. But finally I removed both of them and brought people from the outside who'd never worked and had never heard of requisite, but it still worked because they came in different perspectives, not already embedded in their old way of doing things, and were open to learning requisite and even them operating a different way. Once they were in place, onboarded, kind of got the lay of the land, then the real transformation finally clicked. We combined not only requisite principles, but project management principles. So it wasn't like a one-thing fix. They didn't know how to manage projects. Nothing was formal. You know, project plan was an Excel spreadsheet with Glenn's going to do this, Michael's going to do this, and it'll be done sometime. So initiatives that floundered before, we actually completed successfully. Before we started, and this was really important, before we started any project, we assessed what level of work was needed on that project team and in what role. When I got there, even like especially cross-organizational teams, they called them, they didn't call them project teams, I can't even remember what they called them. But like I would be in there because I had already been exposed to requisite. I went, okay, there are 4 levels of people on this project team, all with the same work. You know, everybody, we didn't have different levels of work, accountabilities or anything. We're all doing the same thing, 4 levels. So that was one of the first things we did. What level of work do we need to get this done? Is there going to be process design involved? Is this just a fix something that already works project or something totally new? Everybody knew what their roles were and the work to be done. They knew now how to work collaboratively and across the organization. Even though IT supported the whole organization, IT can still get siloed. And they just kind of end up with their tunnel vision. This is how we do it. This is how we fix that. So they were exposed to like real collaborative and cross-functional work. We introduced software development life cycle, another formal process. Originally I learned from it learned about it at EDS, but we just kind of put our own spin on it and adapted it to our organization and what we needed to do. All the processes, even our project management, we used the standard project management methodologies, but we used that to design it for our organization. We brought in external expertise when we needed it. We didn't, the IT before kind of tried, was like, oh, we need virtualization, okay, we're gonna send some people to class and then try and do it. And it took way too long. It's kind of like, that's why and another reason we couldn't get anything done. So we actually brought in that expertise and on a contract basis. And not only were they to implement the new technologies, they were to train the people on our staff. So that's how we did it, and that made a huge difference. And by doing all that we did, IT actually ended up being a leader in the organization transformation. We led in process and system design. Because, you know, IT wasn't the only part of the organization that was just in situational response. So people would see, people across the organization would see how we were doing things and go like, oh gosh, I guess we should do that too. Just project management process design. When I first floated out project management and I wanted to build a team and bring some people in to manage all the organization's projects, the most common response was, oh, we don't really need that. We manage our own projects. Well, so like I kind of stepped back, okay, like, we're gonna do it for IT projects. There's always cross-functional resources, even on IT projects, and they'll see it, and they'll see the difference. They'll know what's expected of them on that project team, and when, as opposed to how we were doing it before. It's like, oh, I need you to do that tomorrow. So that kind of worked, because they did all of a sudden, all the other business units were asking for project managers. You know, they wanted some of that. So everyone kind of noticed that this was how you got things done. We built, even business cases were something the credit union didn't do. You know, it was very much a patriarchal type environment. Somebody wanted to put in a new system. Rarely was appropriate due diligence done. They just kind of went to the CEO and like, I need $150,000 for this new collection system, or else our delinquencies are going to go crazy. Well, of course, the CEO went, ooh, can't have that, signed it, and they had purchased a system that they couldn't get implemented. With the kind of new importance of the self-service channel, which I call home banking, mobile banking, audio response. We had to build an e-services team for that focus. Although although that channel is totally technology based, and a lot of financial institutions put e-services under IT, I didn't. Because ultimately, the self-service channel is a business. It's just a technology-based business. So it was still under me as CIO, but it had totally separate level 3 leadership. I had a business operations manager I put in place, as well as an individual contributor technology architect. And I actually modeled that role after the technology staff specialist in Jackson's book. We went from mobile banking being on the project list for about 4 years with nothing happening, to getting the e-service team built, getting the mobile banking vendor selected in like 4 months, and then 5 months later, we were live with mobile banking. We were so late with mobile banking because USAA is in our space and they were like way ahead of us. I really believe we wouldn't have been able to do what we needed to do with mobile and the rest of the self-service channel if we weren't already modeling and living requisite. So now let's talk about the future from Stratum 5. I'm not the CIO anymore. As Michael said, I'm the COO. It's a level 5 role, but it's not just a level 5 IT role. I actually run the whole direct business. Now, just to give you a short story, we actually have split the credit unions organization in two. There's the indirect business, which is indirect auto and our mobile home division. I say mobile home, don't tell Anthony I said mobile home. It's manufactured housing.
Trailers.
They shouldn't have come up with MH because mobile home manufactured housing. Those businesses are very different because the business, the loan is not acquired through the member. It's acquired through a broker or a car dealer, and we basically buy the paper. So it's not really a face-to-face or any kind of contact with the member until we buy the paper, get it originated, and then it looks like any other loan. It's our member, we talk to the member or whatever. So we actually, those businesses are very different, so we split it. So I have the direct business. Even though IT is traditionally one of the support functions and away from the business, IT is also in the direct business now as well, because our direct business is about technology now. We have an older membership, so we still have a lot of members that want to come to the branch just to do whatever. But the future is about the technology aspects of our direct business. Our branches are way bigger than they need to be. We need more technology in the branches. The call center is very much still, you know, what's my balance, give the balance, goodbye. You know, short turnaround time so the call waiting numbers don't go way up. That kind of conflicts with what we want. And what we want is to steer members towards the best channel for them and make sure they know about the new capabilities, they know the service. Just because someone's older doesn't mean they don't want the technical option. It may be that they just haven't been taught. I think about my mother all the time. You know, she'd go to the credit union all the time in our little town. And I'd go, Mother, you know, why don't you use home banking? Oh, no. Then one time, she wanted me to do something. I went, well, I'll get home banking set up for you. And I did the transfer or whatever she wanted. She just kind of watched. And then she went from not using it at all to using it every day to check her balance, because they like to do that. Not me. I like to see something dropping. So, and it was the same with the debit card. You know, I'd take her to the grocery store and she'd write a check. You know, I'd be humiliated, hoping nobody would see me. And I showed her how to use. She said, well, I don't know how to use that. And I showed her how to use it, and she's whipping it out. So we really need to show them. I think there's an inclination to write off the older customers, like, oh, they'll never use self-service. I just think we need a different approach, and people have to be comfortable with technology to use it. But the self-service option is better for them. It's better for the credit union. A self-service channel transaction costs us anywhere from 10 to 15 cents. A branch transaction costs us between $15 and $20.
Can you tell me what your head count and assets under management were in 2008 and then in 2014?
You know, the assets, we actually are shrinking a little bit by design. So, yeah, we were probably 2.9 or something around there. And we've shrunk to 2.8 something. So we're not really growing asset side, but that's by design. Employee count, amazingly, through a lot of change and a lot of additions, really has kind of stayed around 670 to 680 throughout all of this. You know, a lot of that's because of the branches. Most of the elimination of roles has been in the branches. I mean, even though we have 5,000 square feet in the branches, you know, we don't staff those branches like we used to. In the operations area, when I got that, You know, we had to redesign, we had to discover everything that was being done, and in this one area, and we didn't have to eliminate anybody's job, because we knew some things were gonna change. We started using temporaries as people dropped off. But just by looking at the work and organizing it in a more requisite way and designing requisite, and this is just our first step, we eliminated 3.5 FTE. So we're gaining efficiencies just through design, even though we've added a lot of management roles. We have also eliminated. You know, we were never higher than an L5 organization. There were 7 levels in lending. So we delayered some areas. So it's kind of interesting. We really haven't like gone crazy with it.
How did you eliminate the wastage from development?
How did I eliminate?
Eliminate the wastage from development, like programming.
I'm sorry.
The wastage.
Waste.
The wastage, yeah.
Well, just by having process, it eliminated so much rework. We installed quality assurance and formalized QA testing, playbooks for whatever we needed to do. So just by doing that, you know, we didn't have to do things 5 times. You know, we put something in that actually worked. We didn't have to pull it out and rework it and do everything again. Our failover process, which is basically our disaster recovery, if our main core platform fails, we fail over to another one. When we did that, it used to take 10 to 12 hours of downtime just by getting formal processes in place, everybody knowing what their role is, what needed to be done. And it was one of my objectives. It's down to two hours. And my ultimate goal is no downtime. But that's a little ways. We need the vendor to help with that.
Has project management protocols and processes that you use ever caused problems with holding requisite?
Not at all. Oh, you know, because we in IT, in my organization, we have the luxury of basically running the system called project management. So everyone knows what their role is and not. I mean, it's, you know, it's not perfect, but it's so way better than it used to be when nobody knew what their role was, and we never couldn't hit a date, even if we set one. So not really.
Zandy, how do you reconcile between a steering committee in a project management environment that has consensus-based decision-making experience to using the authority and accountability model?
Yeah, it's very interesting, the steering committee thing. We don't have steering committees. I don't feel steering committees are requisite, just by their nature. So in project management, one of the main things we do is a project charter that maps out what everyone's authority is, what the decision-making process is. You know, is it consensus building? Is it fall back to the executive sponsor? We decide that at the beginning, and ultimately, whoever the executive sponsor of the project is, makes that decision. Is it going to be his decision or her decision, or is she delegating the authority? And a lot of times it doesn't have to be delegated. If it's a level 3 project, it's that level 3 manager's project, and they should have the authority that they need to run it. Yes?
Do you measure the employee engagement or satisfaction and the evolution over time?
Yeah, obviously we always start with fear and kind of not buying it. It's like, okay, this is, you know, the latest and greatest management thing. Ultimately, unless you have managers and leaders that are modeling it, that believe in it, that don't say, oh, RO is something we have to do, then it can build. But I can tell you there's some people who did not come around and left either on their own or kind of were helped out. But we give them time. We know that this this really is ultimately a culture change more than a system change. But it always started out with fear and doubt and just kind of, well, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing and see how long I can get away with it. But it's grown. I wouldn't say 100%, but more times than not, people go, gosh, it's really nice to know what my role is, know who my boss is, and to have a boss that can actually add value to what I do. Instead of everybody expecting everything out of you and you're a help desk person. I hope that answers your question.
Zandy, I think we've got time for 2 more.
Okay.
I just want to make an observation, Zandy, that we found this too. It's so you know you're in trouble when you hear someone say to another person in an organization, so do you want us to do RO or do you want us to do our work? It's like, hello. Do RO. It's a way of understanding work processes, et cetera. And it's like, oh God, how do you break that down?
Yeah,
So,
it's a true, whenever I hear somebody say that, I go like, okay, we're not there yet with that person or that area, because it's not something we do. It's just, for me, it's just integrated in everything I plan or do. It's just,
canvas, you paint everything
I
on.
still refer to the book and all my resources, on a regular basis.
So do you, because by the sounds you had a strong methodology, a PM type of methodology. One question is, which did you follow a global one like a PMI or something? And then did you leverage the PM tools more, or did you also bring in the RO tools like QQTR and to roll that out? Because I know people, I love how you said people just want to get things done, so they can embrace sometimes PM earlier than RO. So your thoughts about that?
Right, so first question, yes, we used PMI as the basis, but the level 3 manager I brought in designed our version of it. So we have a EPMM, Enterprise Project Management Methodology. So it's just SACU's spin on it, but the basis for it is PMI. We bring requisite into every project. There's usually a task assignment first, and that's where it starts. So it starts out with the task. What's the output? When's it due? What's the quality and quantity expected? What resources do you get? And how does it have to be integrated? It usually always starts with that, especially if it's a delegated down project. Now, I preach all the time, it's like, I shouldn't have to task assign everything we need to get done. There's level 3 work inherent in a level 3 role, and they should be initiating projects on their own. And so they can choose, depending on what the project looks like, whether they task assign. But even if you look at our project charters, it's very similar to a task assignment, and it clearly lays out the roles, the accountabilities, the authorities, and those kinds of things. So it's all interwoven.
Jerry, the last one's for you.
Actually, just a comment. One of our most successful CEO clients, guy turned around a big steel company in Canada, would say early on to people who were afraid and confused, he would explain, first of all, this is the only way I know how to manage, and this is why it helps me. I don't expect at the beginning you'll like it. I don't expect at the beginning that you'll want to do it. I don't even expect that you will do it unless you want to work here. and then that gets people's attention.
It's the big non-negotiable. You can kind of rebel in the beginning, but there's a limit. And so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.